The Bernie blackout is real. If you don't believe that there's media bias against Senator Sanders, then I've got a little bit more proof to make my case. A new study from the Media Research Center. Now, this is admittedly a conservative outlet, but they've looked at basically what they did is they just looked at how much a particular network, ABC in this case, talked about the different candidates and tallied up the numbers. Okay, well that's pretty hard to mess up, pretty hard to slant. And what they found is that former Vice President Joe Biden got the lion's share of coverage. How much? 68 minutes. Now, this is as it pertains to the Democratic presidential nomination. So, 68 minutes for Joe Biden. That is nearly 10 times the amount of Senator Bernie Sanders. Sanders is actually tied with South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg with the fifth most attention from ABC News out of the 2020 candidates. Now, that's crazy. Bernie Sanders has been consistently in the top three when it comes to polling, national polling. And then you also have him polling at number one in several states, second and third, respectively, in others. And again, very solid third in national polling. So what gives? What gives? Well, let me give you some details, right? And I've got some theories on this. Biden, by the way, like you said, got the most, followed by Senator Kamala Harris. She got 15 minutes, followed by Senator Elizabeth Warren and former Representative Beto O'Rourke. O'Rourke got 8 minutes, Warren got 12 minutes. Both got more attention than Bernie Sanders. Jesus. 52% went straight to Biden, over half of all the time, out of all the candidates combined. Kamala Harris and Beto O'Rourke still poll way less than Bernie Sanders. So there's a disparity here. Why are they getting more airtime? And why is Biden dwarfing everybody? I understand Biden's the leader in the polls, right? But at the same time, shouldn't every candidate have a fair amount of time or fair and equal amount of time of discussion, no matter where they are in the polling? I mean, you would think. So now we know the answer, and it's because the media despises progressives. Simple as that. Now, Elizabeth Warren, she is getting a little bit of coverage, right? And look, she did put out pretty detailed policy positions, but so is Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders also puts out incredibly detailed policy positions. They get no coverage, probably because those policy positions are to the left of Warren. So that's why people, well, by the way, still don't know about Medicare for All being actual legislation that is very, very detailed. It's over 100 pages long. Bernie wrote the damn bill, as he says famously, and details exactly how it's going to be paid for and implemented. Now, you ask regular people who tend to watch MSNBC or CNN or establishment news, they're going to say, well, Bernie does not have, he doesn't have plans. He doesn't have like details. Elizabeth Warren, she's got the details. And that's the narrative that comes out of cable news. That's not Elizabeth Warren's fault. No, that's the media. It's the media not being honest, not playing it straight. So now, also, why people don't know about the Green New Deal. Green New Deal, again, it's Bernie Sanders has taken it from a framework and turned it out into a actual piece of legislation, and actually the strongest piece of legislation out there to curb climate change. Nobody knows that because people, look, in the media do not cover it. And in fact, when they cover Bernie Sanders, it's usually negative. Again, you see it all the time. Why doesn't Bernie Sanders drop out? No detail is in his plans. Sanders, seeing his support slip, he's seeing it drop. Why doesn't he just drop out already? I mean, there's no difference between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. That's what you're getting from mainstream media, from corporate media. When in reality, there's a huge difference between Warren and Sanders, even though they're both considered to be progressive. And not only that, but you have the consistent Bernie bro narrative. You realize Bernie Sanders has the most diverse base. They're young, they're female, they're diverse. They don't look like me. Okay? White men like me are actually not as popular, or Bernie Sanders is not popular with, which is, look, again, flies in the face of that Bernie bro narrative that they all look like me. They're all younger white males. Not true. Not true at all. And of course, what goes along with that is, well, you must be sexist. So we've seen that narrative. In fact, just recently, great example, Emily Tish Sussman. Now, she's a Democratic strategist and former vice president of campaigns of this for the Center for American Progress. She was recently on MSNBC. She said this, quote, I actually heard someone saying something that I thought was an interesting point. But basically, if you're still supporting Sanders as opposed to Warren, it's kind of showing your sexism. Because Warren has more detailed plans, and her plans have evolved. I think it was an interesting point, and I think there may be something to it. Now, I don't think that she talked to anybody. No, I think that's her point. And she, tries to deflect criticism by saying, well, I heard it, and I kind of agree with it. I mean, what do you do? What do you do? But no, Emily Sussman, the reason that she has these points of view is, again, she's a Democratic strategist, right? And she's worth about $100 million. Now, $100 million, her family, her dad is Donald Sussman, who was a gigantic Hillary Clinton donor back in 2016. So that's where this comes from. Okay. And here's the thing. That wealth tax, and one of the differences between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren is their wealth tax proposal. I went through that probably last week. So there are a lot more tiers in Bernie Sanders' plan. Just 2 tiers in Elizabeth Warren, 8 for Sanders. And it's a lot more comprehensive. It raises twice as amount of money. Would impact people like the Sussmans much more than Elizabeth Warren's plan. So, if you still believe in Elizabeth Warren over Bernie Sanders, then, or, if you still believe in Sanders over Warren, you must be a sexist. No, not true at all. Not true at all. And so this is what they do on cable news. They talk trash about Bernie, and they mislead people about policy positions. 7 minutes of Sanders discussion on ABC. And I'm sure most of the other network numbers are about the same. There is a massive campaign to either ignore or attack Senator Sanders. And it's a continuation from 2016. And this is why you don't hear about the fact that Bernie Sanders' base is more diverse. Now, Nate Silver addressed that. You know what he called the diverse base? Residue. He referred to them as residue. Even now today, Bernie Sanders has new fundraising numbers out. Nate Silver, 538, supposed to be the numbers guy, comes out and says things like, well, I mean, yeah, Bernie Sanders raised a lot of money, but I don't think it's really all that predictive of, a campaign actually doing well. He should probably drop out. There is nothing that Nate Silver cannot take and twist to sound like a negative when it comes to Bernie Sanders. Because, again, he's part of the establishment bubble, establishment media, defending establishment interests. His campaign, by the way, those numbers, they raised $25.3 million. There's a graphic on MSNBC saying that he only raised about 24, which was just under what Pete Buttigieg's campaign had reported. Oh, look at that, Pete Buttigieg doing better than Bernie Sanders. Why doesn't Bernie Sanders drop out? I mean, it's incredibly frustrating. By the way, Sanders had a total 1.4 million individual donations, with an average of about $18. Come on, man. That's the highest reported by any Democratic presidential hopeful this year. This is what rigged media looks like. And I know Bernie Sanders is out there talking about rigged media. And he's absolutely right, because this is a good example. They are against him because they don't want any sort of change. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.